Hey guys, it's Mrs. Kleinley with this week's First Chapter Friday. This week, I'm excited to be talking to you about The Bad Beginning. This is book 1 in the series of Unfortunate Events series that we have in our library. This is a 13-book series. So if you like this book, and I suspect that you will be able to keep reading for quite some time as you read through the series. This may be familiar to you because it was recently made into a Netflix miniseries, and this series is not new. It's been around since the 90s, and it has been enjoyed by many, many students and adults alike. So I am actually not going to read you the beginning of the first chapter because the first chapter is very, very lengthy. So we're going to start towards the end of the first chapter, and I just want to give you a little bit of background knowledge about what this book is about. So on the cover there, you see the Baudelaire children, and one day they were down walking on the beach. They were kind of living their best life. They were walking along the shore, and a stranger approaches them and tells them that there had been a terrible, terrible accident. Their house burned down, and their parents were in the house, and they had passed away as a result of a fire. So the 3 children were left as orphans. So they go with this gentleman from the bank who was handling their parents' affairs, and they go to live with a relative that they had never even met before, a great uncle who they didn't even know. So as you can imagine, they were sad and scared and, anxious. They were having all of these emotions as they are going to find out who they're going to be living with for the rest of their lives. So that's where our story is going to pick up. So here we go. They had just pulled up into the neighborhood to meet this great uncle, Count Olaf, his name is. "Here we are," Mr. Poe said in a voice undoubtedly meant to be cheerful. "Your new home." The Baudelaire children looked out and saw the prettiest house on the block. The bricks had been cleaned very well, and through the wide open windows one could see an assortment of well-groomed plants. Standing in the doorway with her hand on the shiny brass doorknob was an older woman, smartly dressed, who was smiling at the children. In one hand she carried a flower pot. "Hello there," she called out. "You must be the children Count Olaf is adopting." Violet opened the door of the automobile, got out to shake the woman's hand. It felt firm and warm, and for the first time in a long while, Violet felt as if her life and the lives of her siblings might turn out well after all. "Yes," she said. "Yes, we are. I am Violet Baudelaire, and this is my brother Klaus and my sister Sunny. And this is Mr. Poe, who has been arranging things for us since the death of our parents." "Yes, I heard about the accident," the woman said, as everyone said. "How do you do? I'm Justice Strauss." "That's an unusual first name," Klaus remarked. "It's my title," she explained, "not my first name. I serve as the judge on the High Court." "How fascinating," Violet said. "And are you married to Count Olaf?" "Oh, goodness, no," Justice Strauss said. "I don't actually know him very well. He's just my next-door neighbor." The children looked from the well-scrubbed house of Justice Strauss to the dilapidated one next door. The bricks were stained with soot and grime. There were only 2 small windows, which were closed with the shades drawn, even though it was a nice day. Rising above the windows was a tall and dirty tower that tilted slightly to the left. The front door needed to be repainted, and carved in the middle was an image of an eye. The entire building sagged to the side like a crooked tooth. "Oh," said Sunny, and everyone knew what she meant was, "What a terrible place! I don't want to live there at all." "Well, it was nice to meet you," Violet said to Justice Strauss. "Yes," said Justice Strauss, gesturing to her flower pot. "Perhaps one day you could come over and help me with my gardening." "That would be very pleasant," Violet said, very sadly. It would, of course, be very pleasant to help Justice Strauss with her gardening, but Violet could not help thinking that it would be far more pleasant to live in Justice Strauss's house instead of Count Olaf's. What kind of a man, Violet wondered, would carve an image of an eye into his front door? Mr. Poe tipped his hat to Justice Strauss, who smiled at the children and disappeared into her lovely house. Klaus stepped forward and knocked on Count Olaf's door, his knuckles rapping right in the middle of the carved eye. There was a pause, and then the door creaked open, and the children saw Count Olaf for the first time. "Hello, hello, hello," Count Olaf said. He was very tall and very thin, dressed in a gray suit that had many dark stains on it. His face was unshaven, and rather than 2 eyebrows like most human beings had, he had just one long one. His eyes were very, very shiny, which made him look both hungry and angry. Hello, my children. Please step into your new home and wipe your feet outside so no mud gets indoors. As they stepped into the house, Mr. Poe behind them, the Baudelaire orphans realized what a ridiculous thing Count Olaf had just said. The room in which they found themselves was the dirtiest they had ever seen, and a little bit of mud from outdoors wouldn't have made a bit of difference. Even by the dim light of the one bare light bulb that hung from the ceiling, the three children could see that everything in the room was filthy. From the stuffed head of a lion, which was nailed to the wall, to the bowl of apple cores which sat on a small wooden table. Klaus willed himself not to cry as he looked around. "This room looks like it needs a little work," Mr. Poe said, peering around in the gloom. "I realize that my humble home isn't as fancy as the Baudelaire mansion," Count Olaf said, "but perhaps with a bit of your money we could fix it up a little nicer." Mr. Poe's eyes widened in surprise, and his coughs echoed in the dark room before he spoke. "The Baudelaire fortune," he said sternly, "will not be used for such matters. In fact, it will not be used at all until Violet is of age." Count Olaf turned to Mr. Poe with a glint in his eye like an angry dog. For a moment, Violet thought that he was going to strike Mr. Poe across the face, but then he swallowed. The children could see his Adam's apple bob in his skinny throat and shrugged his patchy shoulders. "All right, then," he said. "It's the same to me. Thank you very much, Mr. Poe, for bringing them here. Children, I will now show you to your room." "Goodbye, Violet, Klaus, and Sunny," Mr. Poe said, stepping back through the front door. "I hope you will be very happy here. I will continue to see you occasionally, and you can always contact me at the bank if you have any questions." "But we don't even know where the bank is," Klaus said. "I have a map of the city," Count Olaf said. "Goodbye, Mr. Poe." He leaned forward to shut the door, and the Baudelaire orphans were too overcome with despair to get a last glimpse of Mr. Poe. They now wished they could all stay at the Poe household, even though it smelled. Rather than looking at the door, then the orphans looked down and saw that although Count Olaf was wearing shoes, he wasn't wearing any socks. They could see in the space of pale skin between his tattered trouser cuff and his black shoe that Count Olaf had an image of an eye tattooed on his ankle, matching the eye on his front door. They wondered how many other eyes were in Count Olaf's house, and whether for the rest of their lives they would always feel as though Count Olaf were watching them, even when he wasn't nearby. Okay, guys, so this book goes on. It gets creepier and creepier by the chapter. There's more and more mystery built in as you read through the book. Basically, the Baudelaire children are very, very wealthy because they inherited all of this money from their parents. But as Mr. Poe was telling them, the money was not going to become accessible until Violet became an adult. So a lot of this story is about Count Olaf trying to get his hands on their money. I think a lot of kids are going to really enjoy this book, especially kids who like mystery, kids who like creepy, kids who like a little spooky and eerie. This book is going to be a great book for you, and I think you'll really actually enjoy the whole series. So again, our book this week is The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. It's the first book in the series of Unfortunate Events series. It is found in our mystery section under SNI for Snicket. I hope you enjoy. Happy reading.